Welcome to the You Are a Philanthropist podcast. I'm here with Jason Dobbs-Hyer. Jason is the founder and chief inspiration officer of Jdh Ministries, a former Marine and father of a teenage boy.
You are the kind of person who wants to improve the lives of others, but you need to take pride in your everyday actions. You Are a Philanthropist believes that every act of goodwill deserves to be recognized as philanthropy. Each individual action you take impacts another's life. Believe that what you do makes a difference. So call yourself a philanthropist and start a ripple effect of generosity that boomerangs back to you. Go to youareaphilanthropist.com/shop. Style your outside to match your inside. Choose a t-shirt, hoodie, or bag to show how much you love giving to others. That's youareaphilanthropist.com/shop. Welcome to the You Are a Philanthropist podcast with Jen Klein, a certified fundraising executive and philanthropic entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you to make a difference in your community and our world. Jen believes all acts of kindness matter, and this show is designed to help you take pride in your everyday actions of improving the lives of others and making a change in the world. Now, here's Jen.
Jason, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my honor. Thanks, Jen, for the invite. I'm humbled and grateful. Not really sure why you chose me, but hopefully your audience will, get some value out of some of the words that we share. And if it touches one life, then it was definitely worth the time. So thank you for the consideration and invite. It's a blessing to spend part of our afternoon together.
Yeah, so that's a great question about why you are here today. And we don't know each other very well, but we are connected on Facebook. And
come on, social media.
Well, we know each other very well through social media. And what I know about you is that you're a very positive person. And I've had other podcast guests be on here because they're also very positive. And we've talked about in the past, for example, with Paul Ott, how important optimism and enthusiasm and positivity is to being a philanthropist, a lover of mankind. Can you tell me about your inspiration for putting that positive energy into the world?
Well, typically, I can't speak for everyone, but typically it takes negative experiences to have a kind of consciousness woke moment. And for me, it was about 23 years ago. I used to live a very sinful life, doing lots of things I shouldn't have been doing and going down a wrong road and kind of taking advantage of all the insecurities that I faced. But back in 98, I believe it was, I was given 1 year to live for all the bad lifestyle choices kind of catching up with me by my cardiologist, giving 1 year to live. And it was at that moment that I decided, okay, I had my come to Jesus moment literally in an elevator in East Orange at the VA hospital. Had gone back and forth to the medical clinics and just kind of gave up on the medical institution. And God just spoke to my heart and, told me to turn around. So that was the starting point. That was the impetus for kind of the journey. But it really accelerated 14 and a half years ago when my son's mother left me. And so that kind of forced me to grab my Bible, and was one of the best things I did is during our separation and divorce period, I read from Genesis 1 to Revelations 22. And that period really transformed my heart, and I decided to give over my life for God and to start working on the things that were broken that my ex-wife felt that she needed to leave me for. So that started a rehabilitation process, and that was about 14 and a half years ago. So I just decided at that point that it just felt better to lift people up. And selfishly, by doing that, I actually felt, better about myself. So it was part of my selfish need to grow and to manifest. But the more I kind of made that a habit, the more I was like, I'm comfortable in who God is allowing me to become now. And now it feels good to do this. And the habit stuck 14 and a half years later. And here we are. So, that to me, and having the duality of living a former life of sin and, you name it, we can go into that if you like, and then seeing the ways of God and the good life, the phrase I refer to as all things good. And that's kind of how I see every day, is waking up. And my formula now is pretty much, fourfold. When I get out of bed every morning, I thank God for my pulse, because I had a year to live 23 years ago, for my pulse and my breath. And then, I basically get up with a fourfold process. God, when I ask him after I thank him, where do you want me to go today? What do you want me to do? Who do you want me to share an uplifting message with? And what do you want me to say? I have not missed a day doing that, and I can't even remember. That is my blueprint of the day. Every day I get up and I let God's Spirit guide me through the day. I listen for his voice, which I think is the most critical thing that happened. That happened way back in East Orange. I literally heard an audible voice. I don't use drugs. I don't do any but I heard a voice that day, and God said, it's time to go to work. So that's kind of my blueprint for everyday living is, as I just shared. So obviously there's a lot in those 14 and a half years that have manifested. But as I mentioned to you kind of off the record, one of the things I'm most proud of in 14 and a half years, and most people don't even know this, I'm still going through one of the most challenging phases of my life. And there's not one time in 14 and a half years, and this is one of the things I'm most proud of, and said a negative thing on Facebook or responded in a negative way. And I think that takes it in with today's, provoking, an enormous discipline. And more importantly, it takes God's Spirit to kind of hold that back. So I've just developed into what I consider a beautiful soul. And I'm going to live out my last days, encouraging people, just because it feels good. And there's so much hurt in the world right now, and hurting people hurt people. So therefore we need to to get to work. So that's kind of where my ministry manifested from, is when I got divorced. It was ironic about it. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 1.5. My ex-wife left me when my son was 1.5. So I was always known in school as Dobbs, Jason Dobbs. But my mom remarried shortly thereafter, and to Hyer, my dad, Jdh. And so through this reflective process, it was time to honor my dad and say, okay, no, I need a new identity. I need, kind of like Paul, Saul becoming Paul. I needed a new identity to go from Jason Dobbs to Jason Dobbs-Hyer, hence Jdh, because it was a representative of my life and where I'd come from, and to honor my dad, who stepped in the gap and raised me as his child. And then for me to then do the same to my son, because I was faced with the same redemptive kind of process, which kind of, looking back now, is kind of miraculous. So that's how Jdh Ministries came about. And it was basically servant leadership. That's kind of where my focus is all about. And I do that through the chief inspiration side of, inspiring really comes from God, right? Inspiration is for what purpose? You can inspire to do what? To do good, right? Holistically, to bring about all the good elements of people's lives and all the dimensions, from the spiritual side, from the physical side, the emotional side. And, you can't live a high quality life without all those things being in balance. So that's kind of, I don't know if I answered your question. That was a long-winded way to, I'm going to kind of just share from the heart, which is, I have two sides of me. I have the military side. I can go do what I need to do to fight the battles, but I also have a sensitive side too, just like Jesus did. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I cry and all that good stuff. So
thank you so much for sharing more about your story. I loved hearing about it. And I want to thank you for your service as well. How many years did you spend in the Marines?
I only served 2.5 years because I actually was discharged due to a disability. So I had a 4-year contract, but I ended up medically discharged at 2.5. It sounds like
those times with the Marines was very foundational for who you are today as well.
It's funny you asked that. I mean, at that time, again, this disclaimer, there's like two sides. That was pre-spiritual awakening. I went in because I'm blessed that I went in, and I'm super thankful that I made that decision, but I went in for the wrong reason. I went in with an ego. I had something to prove, that I could become a U.S. Marine, kind of show the world. And that really manifested from the fact that my biological dad walked out of my life without ever wanting to be in it until 40 years later. And so I needed to, when a father does that to a child, it tells them you're insignificant, you don't matter. So therefore, I was going to show everybody that I mattered by becoming a big, bad Marine. It became foundational in the sense that I developed, a wicked discipline. I've always been a disciplined person because it was emotionally protective for me. I needed to have those boundaries and striving for perfection. And ironically, that actually is part of the thing that crippled my marriage. So there's kind of a balance with that. Striving for perfection to be like Jesus is different than trying to strive for perfection from an emotional insecurity perspective, right? So for me, the Marines, it was one of the best decisions that I've made because I learned more about myself, and it reinstilled another level of discipline to this day that has served me really well in dealing with all kind of either relationship issues, just navigating the everyday life with people. I can do certain things tactically within the day-to-day that help serve me well. Plus, obviously, I served honorably to the country, and I'm proud of that. And given the state of where we're in, I actually had a vibe to kind of go back. I was hoping my son would join and I could go back with him because I could easily go back and do it. I'm fit enough to do it. And it was kind of a cool experience. But yeah, it was definitely foundational because when I went to college, I didn't party. I went straight to college a few years later. I went to college 7 straight years and graduated, summa cum laude straight through. No partying, studied, took it all in. And, and my background is in counseling, psychology and counseling. So that's kind of where I went from the formal educational process. So yes, it was another long-winded. It definitely Marines were foundational, and I love my brothers and sisters that are doing it. And I'm actually in that tactical military mode now, just because of the state of where we're at in America.
Mm. So I want to talk a little bit about your certifications. You mentioned that you are very fit today, and I saw that you have some nutrition certifications as well, which is actually, I didn't mention this to you, something that I'm pursuing, a health coaching certificate program as well. So Jdh Ministries, it sounds like you do a bunch of holistic support coaching for individuals, both in overall wellness and nutrition and fitness. Can you tell me a little bit more about Jdh Ministries?
So I actually have 2 coaching consulting practices. One is Jdh Ministries, the other is Jdh Wellness. And what I learned in my background is in religious education, psychology, religious education, and counseling. But what I learned is in becoming a holistic person in terms of faith integration, you really need the Spirit of God to guide you, right, for purpose and meaning. That anchors all of the holistic pieces around it. Physicality is important, but it shouldn't supersede the Spirit. The same thing with, whether financial advice, business development, all of that kind of comes out of the foundation of you being a good person, trying to do all things good to serve God with what, you're building. So from ministry side, most of my coaching is in, I have to say, more on the emotional kind of side, relational side. And you can spin the dial on the wellness continuum and, go around. So it's more holistic in nature, but the basis is we bring the Spirit into the mix. And that's the difference, is I don't have a bias. I can still coach people who are non-Christian, that aren't Christian. So that's where the Jdh Wellness comes in, because wellness is self-serving for all things. But there's definitely a gap there without God being God-centered, Christ-centered. And so that for me is where most of the energy and time is spent in helping people kind of get on their lives, because everything really comes out of having a purpose and meaning. If you don't have a purpose and meaning and sense of direction in life, all that other stuff really is just spinning your wheels in the mud. So my ministry is really holistic in nature. If I had to, where I spend most of my time coaching, it's usually in the emotional side, because people either have a self-defeatist mindset, they don't believe in themselves, they self-medicate through either nutrition. So therefore, if you get that right, then you can then help them with the nutritional side and so forth and so on. But really where I'm going with my ministry, I've been at that for I started my ministry a few years after I was divorced. So 12 and a half years. And I've basically done that pro bono. So I've actually coached people who needed the help, and I didn't worry about the financial side. And over 10 years or so, that got me into trouble because I ended up funding that on my own dime. And now I'm, X amount of dollars in debt because of that. So I just haven't figured out a way to monetize it, and didn't really want it's funny that the philanthropy, I really didn't want the charity side. Like, I never saw God that way, but you need money to live. So therefore it's a transfer of value. And I just, never did it. So I'm moving more towards a new ministry where what I found in the process is where I'm really good at. And I think this is an important thing for people to realize. You can't be all things to all people. You have to figure out what you're good at and where you fit in. And for me, I see myself more in servant leadership, where there's other people that don't want to be in leadership, but have a ministry background. And the reason why health and wellness, if you look at the church today, if you look at by and large, Christians should honor the Father with their temple, right? Shouldn't put anything bad in it. Just like back in the day when the Israelites were given the commands with the temple to do this and this, and it had to be pristine, right? And in a lot of cases, people were, penalized for it. Now, with the body being the temple, you can't really carry out God's function if you're sick or you don't have a clear mind or your heart's not in the right place. So the wellness side becomes fundamental to what you are. And when I took a look at the Christian community, I was like, they could be more out of touch than from those who are without. Like, how could that be if we're supposed to be honoring God in all things? So I developed a concept called In Spirit Life, and I'm still in the formative stage of this, where there's a lot of people that can do either music ministry in Christianity or want to be, like maybe yourself, a health coach, but don't want to have a formal ministry to plug them in. And so the In Spirit Life would be a way to bring that all together in a platform that they can then, therefore, we can share in a universal message and message of unity to bring that out. So that's my next development, because that's where I'm better suited. I've done years and years of coaching, helped hundreds of people, still do it now kind of indirectly. But that's, God's shown me that's not on the one-on-one coaching where I need to be. I need to be in other places. So it's because I'm still, as I mentioned off the air, I'm still working like Paul. So I'm doing ministry, but I'm also working as a chief customer officer, for a drinking water protection company. So I keep myself busy, but my heart is there with the In Spirit Life. And it's like, you're in Littleton, or now that I know that, but if you were in PA and I'm here in, Metro West Boston, I'm with you in spirit becomes like, hey, I'm with you in spirit. That's exactly what the ministry that I'm looking to build has in mind, is bringing holistically all these practitioners together in one health and wellness ministry. And that's what In Spirit Life will be about.
That's so important, to have a big vision. And that's what, this podcast is all about, is let's get started with what we can do today.
Right.
And let's pursue it with excitement and passion. And like you said, it comes back to us, which is such a blessing to be a receiver when you give. I mean, that concept is so divine to me, that is part of how we were created, to be giving to others. And so when I think about you, I can see that with you are being very generous to people with giving your time to ensure that they're putting proper nutrients into their body, really taking care of themselves, body, mind, and spirit. And how foundational taking care of ourselves is to giving as well. Have you found that in your own life, where the more you take care of yourself, the more you're able to give?
So I'm a competitive road cyclist. So basically, I ride my bike as fast as I can, and I'll participate in events to do that. And so years ago, I started up a nonprofit, M3 Cycling, which M3 stands for Motivate, Mentor, Empower. And so I had a young son at the time, and I raced our local circuit, and I saw that there weren't a lot of kids involved. And I was like, okay, so selfishly again, I was like, there's nothing really here for my son to become a part of. Us older guys, we race for, ego and, midlife crisis kind of stuff, or whatever it may be, just to push the boundaries. But what about kids? So anyway, I ended up starting that as one of the things I'm most proud of as well. We started in our area, that cycling project, and some of my, it was a mentoring program. So it kind of was like almost a one-to-one, and it blew up. I mean, I had so many good, mentors join the team, some of my local, cycling friends, and it just manifested. And they ended up taking the mantle because I went in a different direction, and they blew it up. And then we got several kids that went pro out of it and everything. One of the things I found pride in and being comfortable in who I was being a selfless teammate. So in order to win races, you need to help your teammates win. And the first race we did, I helped one of my teammates win without getting into all the tactics of it all. And when he crossed the line and won, even though it wasn't me, I felt this elation, like, wow, like I'm cool with who I am. I love racing. I did the best in the race I could. But seeing someone else be elevated to success and enjoy that became a prominent feature of like who I am. And so now, like, I'm comfortable in who I am. I can walk around naked. I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm confident in who I am in God because, where he has me and the convictions. But I get more joy seeing other people shine. It's just how I am now. So I'm not intimidated by that. I love seeing it. And anybody who knows, who's close and knows me knows that. If you think about Jesus, he washed his disciples' feet, and he said there's things that, if you believe, you'll do better things than I did. And he set the model for that. So my whole life of living for him is to strive for excellence in all that I do. And when I do that, that's for me, and that's between my relationship with me and God, but also to pull other people up with us. That's discipleship, right? That's what we're supposed to do in loving our brothers and sisters, is to help them when they're down, right? At one point in my early life, I had a porn addiction. And so I have people that literally will call me up and say, listen, man, I slipped up last night, because there's such a trust there, right? And so we pray about it, and, we work through it. There's no judgment. There's no, you're going to burn in hell. It's like, okay, you slipped. Let's, they want to grow. And it's a beautiful manifestation of that. So I'm blessed to be in that part, to be a mentor, coach, what have you, to help guide them through it. And I have people like that too. I have my own mentor team, right? So it's a beautiful combination. But in that mix, there isn't anyone who's, prideful or puts anybody down or anything like that. It's all uplifting to what God would have us be. And we're all on that same journey trying to get to the same place, and that's to heaven, right? As cleanly as we can. We're all human. We're all sinners. And if I can play a little role doing that, then I'm comfortable. So all these experiences that some of them been sharing have led me to the point where I am comfortable in who I am, and I want to see your podcast, Sean. So I'm super excited to be on here. It's like, wow, somebody's taking a concept from a completely different angle, which is so badass in my mind. I'm like, wow, and I'm actually to be able to be a part of it. And now you can, and one day I'll be like, oh my God, I was on her show. Look at her now. She's transformed the lives of a million people. Like, that's just good energy. Like I don't have hate. I don't have a bone of hate in my body. Never have. And with God at center, it's not there. I just love people and want people to come closer to Jesus, because it's his love, right, that allows me to share. I'm just a conduit. That's all I am. Just a vessel to do God's work.
I love what you're saying, particularly about Jesus. He's been someone who has come up in a lot of people's stories about a source of inspiration for them. And we've talked about his unconditional love. We've talked about, his generosity of spirit, but we haven't talked about his servant leadership. And so I love that you're bringing that up today about how it is such a foundational thing about who he was. And you mentioned he washed his disciples' feet. Being a servant isn't something that our society really values.
Great point.
I'm wondering if you could go into why you value being a servant.
Why I value being a servant? Well, it's part of the process. Great question. It's a really good question. It's part of the process of, as I was just sharing, of when you serve, you actually, even though it seems like a derogatory practice, you actually gain, right? That's what I was just alluding to with the notion of it feels good, like to see other people shine, right? And so when Jesus, in my humble opinion, when he was washing their feet, that can seem as an act of lowliness, even his act on the cross. It's an act of power to be able to do that, because so often people with ego, if you look at the state of the world, power, control, and money are the three vices that are wreaking havoc in our whole globe right now. And they're all tied pretty much together. And servant leadership is actually the opposite of that, right? If you think about when Jesus was, which is ironic to me, when the devil went to Jesus on the top of the mountain, he said, listen, all you need to do is bow down and I can give you the whole earth, right? And Jesus was like, no, I'm not going to do that. God is in control, right? All he had to do was to be a servant in that sense, but the rhetorical of that was he was for God's power, but he was showing a duality of that. By letting go of that, he actually had power over that. So servant leadership, actually, there's a great manifested power that gets unleashed to be able to humble yourself, to park the ego, right? Because I'm an alpha male. I'm a type A on 10X. to park that is very difficult in our humanness. But when you put it in God's perspective and allow his Spirit to kind of wash over you and transform your heart from the servant side, you see that washing feet and putting the other person first, you actually benefit from that in ways that you would have never thought. And money, there's not an amount of money that can actually take that place. I mean, I have literally walked the talk. I'm $80,000 in personal debt on my ministry. And I didn't, that's a testimony to the fact that I put people first. I didn't worry about the financial affairs. People came with an issue and a need, and I was in a situation. I said, okay, what do I do with this? Back to my blueprint. God, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? And how do I help this person? And was on my, brought to my attention. I didn't worry about the financial stuff. I let God work in that mix and took care of the situation there. I didn't go through a formal coaching process, even though I do have a couple of different coaching programs, I could put together. It was deal with the need now. And that's how he did it. Just like Jesus going to a town. He didn't say, hold up here, I got to go over here and do this. He just dealt with the needs of the day as he did them. And he had financial backing. He had women that actually supported his ministry when he was out doing his stuff. So I tried to go that route with, okay, God, I'm going to leave it up to you and, fund the ministry. And he didn't. And I learned some, valuable financial lessons along the way. But to answer your question directly, you become who you are in servant leadership, and you become more comfortable and at peace with who you are in the process. And that allows you to then lift other people up. See, Jesus knew who he was in God, right? He talked, I and the Father are one, right? He had the utmost confidence in who he was. That's why he could do what he did. And so for me, I strive for that. That's the goal in life. I'm never even going to get close to Jesus in terms of perfection, but the goal every day with a type A personality is to strive. What can I learn? How can I become better? I slipped up today. I'm going to try and get better the next day. And that comfort allows me to do that. And it just, like I said earlier, it feels really good. It's energizing. It's encouraging to get up every day, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm going through the most challenging. I'm going to give you an analogy to put this into perspective. Okay. And again, I'm grateful for the invite, but this is to summarize how I see how my life is this last 14 and a half years. So imagine you get arrested, right? And you get shackled, you get your you get handcuffed, you get your feet cuffed, and then they put a chain and they link them together, right? Now imagine they then take you and put you into a wooden casket. They lie you down in the casket. They nail the casket shut, right? Then they load you in the back of a van, and they take that van and it drives you down to a concrete company, and they pour a concrete covering over that wooden casket, puts you back in the truck after it dries, and takes you down to the Delaware River, right, where you can go kayaking, and they slowly push that off, and they say, good luck getting out. That's pretty much sums up the 14 and a half years that I've been through. And so, it's a pretty negative, harrowing concept. That's how I felt with all the backstory and a lot of other stuff that has gone on in my life. And yet I still find a way to get up and encourage people and inspire them and, show their value in God. And in that process, that has actually kept me alive. That's kept me out of jail. That's kept me out of doing bad things, getting into drugs and alcohol and all other stuff. So when I'm saying these messages, whether on social media or saying them now, I'm actually saying them to myself, because it's been a coping mechanism for me to keep my spirit and my soul fired up in such a way that, okay, God, I trust you. That casket is slowly descending to the bottom of the ocean. And I've got only a few minutes to get out of this. And I'm going to only one way out, God, is I'm going to need you to break me out of that. And so that's why I do what I do. Nobody knows. I have very few friends that know this, and I'm sharing it openly because this is the truth to servant leadership. Is I do it because that's where God has me in this station of life, and it has formed me into the man that I am, and has helped me to understand and appreciate the true value of life and what humanity is all about.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry for what you're going through. I can tell that you rejoice in all circumstances. Amen.
There's no other way. No other way.
And I know all of us go through difficult periods in our life and difficult things. And certainly now with COVID here, it feels like we're all just slogging through. some hard times. So I love how you're sharing that the answer really is to be giving and giving that positive energy.
That's right.
Positive enthusiasm, optimism. And I know many people are hinging their excitement for the future on the vaccine working. But I think you and I really see it as just something that we can look toward all the time, and not just with one thing that we hope will change things. It's really about going deep within yourself and saying, I can still be positive. I can still see the light. It's within me. It will always be there. And so I love that even though there are hard circumstances in all our lives, we can still rejoice and be thankful and be excited for other people.
If I may add, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that I think gets lost in life is the power of words, right? The Bible, they say, is a living entity, right? It's a living, breathing entity. And when I read the Bible back when my son's mother filed for divorce, like I said, I grabbed the Bible and I read through it cover to cover. And when I was done reading, I said, wow, this is pretty easy to understand. The message is pretty simple. What is everybody like? What? That power that it literally, you can't explain how God does it, but it literally transforms you. And there hasn't been a day, also, another good thing I'm proud of, in 14 and a half years, no matter what I've done, no matter if I was a bad day, that I've not started the day reading Scripture and ended the day reading Scripture, whether it was a verse or two. I let God speak to me. 14 and a half years I've done to this day. And so thinking about social media, how you and I connected and what you found value in wanting to invite me here is the power in the words. One of the things, I just had a recent birthday, and one of the things, the takeaway when people are, wishing you well, you don't know when you put a message out there, the impact it's going to have, as simple as it is. So I let God speak to me. What do you want me to say today, God? And I put a message out, and you may get 1 like, 2 like, you're like, man, nobody read this. What's up with that? And then all of a sudden, a year later on your birthday, someone will send you a direct message saying, hey, man, you said that message back, and man, you have no idea what I was going through, and it literally turned my life around. And I look at that and say, oh, my God, that wasn't me. These aren't my words. God transmitted them through a certain period of time on a certain day, and I was just a willing conduit and servant and say, okay, God, send me. I'm ready to go. I'll say it. And he inspired me to say it, and I wrote it. And so that speaks to the empowerment of like, wow, God used me. And you just get fired up about it. And like, man, there's such a value to that really words. I didn't go out there and take a bullet for somebody, or I didn't, even though I would. Wow. So there's such a power in words that I think people really appreciate sometimes. And, you can have a whole ministry just on that alone. I mean, look at Jesus was the Word. The Word became living flesh. I mean, it doesn't get more powerful than that. That spiritual manifestation that is encapsulated in that process is mind-blowing to me, hence my animation here. So yeah, it's, so servant leadership. Servant leadership for all of us. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, so challenge is a good word to use because it isn't always easy, like you said, and your image of being in a river, shackled in a dark box, can really show how it feels sometimes with what you're going through, how claustrophobic and awful and dark it feels. But like we were saying, the ability to still see the light and rejoice makes it even more powerful, doesn't it?
It's funny. It just flashed in my mind, Jonah and the whale going down, under the earth. I have the other analogy that popped in mind the other day was the lone survivor. You look at the closer you try and walk with God, the more the devil turns up the heat. And it'd be hard to argue these days that somebody didn't give the devil a double shot of espresso because he's running around, and the evil. I mean, every single relationship that I know, for the most part, has been impacted from the impacts of COVID and lockdowns and the insanity and principles being turned upside down. What you thought was once real is no longer real. But then when you look at God's word, it's like it doesn't change. It's the same then, it's the same now, and it's going to be the same in the future. That doesn't change. That's what faith does. It anchors you where you're at.
I think just focusing on that we can still always be seeing the light, even though it feels very dark, that there is always the light that's there that we can look toward.
Yeah, I mean, that's you and I, right? That's others that are listening, right? That's the hope and encouragement is, God, if you have a pulse and you have a breath, you have a purpose, right? You're here for a reason. And so therefore, the next question then logically begs, okay, God, what do you have me here? What do you want me to do? Which is why I came up with that blueprint. That helps to ground me, and it helps me to stay focused on that which matters in the midst of all the insanity that's going around. Because what happens is when you get caught up in that cloud, you lose the opportunity to be of service to somebody right in front of you. Somebody could be literally screaming out right in front of you. You don't see it because you're too busy, distracted in the noise of the world. Most of the stuff in the world, from my humble opinion, is just noise. Life is really simple at the end of the day, and we just distract with other stuff because we don't want to deal with the hard stuff, right? The only way to get comfortable in life is to get uncomfortable. So yes, going down in that casket, shackled, seemingly without a way out, is how I felt inside. But my everyday living manifestation is testimony that I know my God can get me out of this. I know my God can turn this around. My faith is that, and I'm going to walk and I'm going to live like that. It's just like Jesus when he was walking, and he knew that he had to lay his life down. But as he was taking that walk, he walked with confidence, and he continued to take the spitting and the cursing and all the stuff, the ridicule, and he put it all on his shoulders on that cross. And so to me, I don't have that my cross is the casket analogy that I use. That's how I see that's a cumulative vision of my life of 14 and a half years. That's not where the story ends though. And so for me, it's like my Jeep, right? I have a push button on my Jeep, right, to start it. The way I look at my life now in version 2.0 of my life is I haven't even hit the push button on my Jeep to start my life yet. I turned 47. I'm blessed to live to 94. I have my whole life to live in front of me. But I'm not the same person I am now that I was back in my divorce and in my 20s and when I was making all these bad decisions. That former life has died away. I'm all about all things good now. So that gives me there's no greater, I'm here to do work. This is a mission, just as in like my Marine Corps days. You get a mission, you get your marching orders, you suit up, and you go. It's a spiritual mission. What is it every day? And that's how I kind of, my life. That's exciting. As bad as my life, I can go into unpack the things why it's that way, but every day is an opportunity to help somebody in some capacity, whether it's my neighbor, whether it's, if it doesn't matter what it is, I'm willing and ready to do it. And more importantly, I'm conscious and I'm in the moment waiting to do it. And that feels good. And at the same time, it reciprocally creates a peace that surpasses all understanding inside of you, that God is with you no matter all the bombs going off around you, all the turbulence, all the insanity. It keeps you grounded. So therefore, someone who may not be where you're at in the journey, you can lend a helping hand to them, whether it's financial resources, whether it's a kind word. It doesn't matter what it is. It's you're living their life to see them do well and have a high quality life. And that's what Jdh Ministries and Jdh Wellness represents. That's what I bring to the process.
That's beautiful. I'm so inspired. And that's why you're on this podcast, is because the words you use on social media, I tagged you as one of my favorites. I don't think I told you this. And so you come up, and you're the first one to see, because I know you're never going to have a negative word. And there's no controversy about what you're going to write. There's no negative anything. It's just all praying for you, prayers that you're sending out, the inspirational messaging that you got for the day or wanted to share. And
I'm humble by that. I didn't know that, but that's, and to me, it's like, well, I saw something, I don't mean to derail you, but I saw something interesting about a kid. I don't know if you saw that. I don't know, maybe you posted it, where he had a gaming channel, he was on with his friends, and he only had one or two people in his audience. He was doing a gaming podcast kind of thing. And a kid came on there and said, you only got 5 followers. And, and the kid said, hey, 5 is better than none. And hey, listen, if you want to be part of this community, I'd love to have you. And if you don't, I'm sorry to see you go. And it blew up. He went viral because of it. It was 5 people. And it was wow, because he didn't have 100 million followers or 7,000 YouTube views and all this. And it's how do you gauge your success? For me, it's one person. The fact that you just said what you said is my life is success. So if you say for me, what's your success formula, right? This is it. If I was a millionaire or broke or in debt or just, scraping by, I do what I can, when I can, for who I can with what I have. That to me is success. And it could be the littlest things, or it could be buying my son his, Ferrari that he wants in his teenage here, although he's going to have to work for it. But I think, you get the point. So yeah, it's just seeing other people shine. That's keeps us straight in line with the divine. I like coming up with simple rhymes.
I like that you mentioned that story about that boy who had such a great attitude with only having 5 followers and having people kind of bullying him and making fun of that. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me, I had shared on social media yesterday that my son scored the first goal of the soccer season at his very first game, and how exciting that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we did go on to get creamed by the other team. And that wasn't something I shared. Right. And it started to, I started to think in my mind, well, what if we're the losing team of, the whole season? And I started to think about, okay, this might be a lesson that we need to teach the kids, even teach their parents if they're frustrated that their child is on the losing team. All I know is that I was cheering on the sidelines the whole time, and the kids were playing their hardest, and they didn't have any bad words to say. We cheered for the other team at the end. And so, like you said, we can define success differently than how the world defines it. So the world would define it as the winning team, the team who scored the most goals. But when you're the underdog and not feeling that way, and have circumstances where other people seem like the winners, you can really overcome that and change your thinking. Mm-hmm. And that's where the success lies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you think of it too, how did Jesus, how did he sum up success, right? You can look at it in the great commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul, and love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? Implicit and even in that statement alone is a challenge, right? You can't begin to love your neighbor until you first learn to love yourself. And from what we see in society, a lot of people haven't come yet learn to love themselves, and they haven't done that because they haven't let God, who loved us first, love them. Therefore, in that triad, it gets very tricky in terms of, defining what success is. So Jesus would start there. But the other thing he would say is there's no greater love than for a man to lay down his life for his brethren, right? So therefore, wow, I mean, that's a lifetime of unpacking just to discern what that wisdom means. No greater love than to lay down your life for your brethren, right? Meaning put other people first to define success. It wasn't monetary with Jesus. We know that, right? So if we're looking to him for the model of success, it's in love. Right. And that's the truth. So all the things that you and I have been sharing here really are rooted in love. They're manifestations and behaviors and actions of love, acts of love, right? To love your neighbor. What does it mean to love your neighbor? Right. That's a whole unpacking there of wisdom that it could take a lifetime to understand what that means. But it's action. Love is a verb. It's an action. It means to do something. Right. So your point, the lessons, you learn the lessons. I've coached, young kids. I remember one in particular. He literally just reached out to me. It's a beautiful moment. He was the least of them. I nicknamed him Chris the Conqueror. I'll be okay saying his name too. And he was the lowest. He worked hard. We stayed with him. We gave him the love. We encouraged him. We taught him the lessons. He was the slowest on the team at the time, always, dragging behind. And he's won now the best. Years later, he sent me a message. He wants me to come down to one of his bike races. Beautiful to watch that, only because we defined success in the matter of what it meant to him in the paradigm of love at the time, by just being there and encouraging him and inspiring him and not writing him off. He's now a champion. He's going for nationals this year. It's beautiful to watch, and inspiring to see that.
Wow.
And it takes the change agents, like you say, this platform that you're doing here and inviting I've listened to your other guests, but I need to get inspired. It's those change agents are what shape the world and make it meaningful and pleasant to wake up every day to go on either social media or walk outside your door or go to the grocery store in a non-COVID pandemic situation where, you want to run into Jesus at the ball game. You want to run into Jesus at the post office. You want to run into Jesus at the grocery store and so forth. That's the goal, right? Who wouldn't want to experience him? And that's each of our tasks every day, to become more like that, in that servant, leadership, loving way.
Many years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I realized that I was giving to other people a lot more and not giving to myself. Mm-hmm. And I read that verse about love your neighbor as you love yourself, and I flipped it around, just like you said. And it was like, whoa, I'm giving all this energy into other people, but I'm not giving that same energy back into myself. Mm-hmm. And so then it became about, okay, I do need to take care of myself. I do need to be putting healthy food into my body, exercising, mm-hmm. Reading, writing, my favorite passions. I do need to take care of myself and as well as other people. So, people tend to think that Christianity is selfless, but it really is, there's an equal exchange here as partners. I see you as my peer, and
that's right.
Not,
likewise.
Seeing other people as just, journeyers on this journey, like you said,
right.
In this very challenging world, like we said, in this year, particularly challenging. And so when we are giving people that positive energy, and I know that for us comes from God, when we're giving that level of love and joy and patience, all the fruits of the Spirit, we're blessing other people and showing up as they need it too, and hopefully that they can be that change agent, like you said, into the people that they touch. So it does have a ripple effect, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a spark, right? So you think about Jesus went through the same thing. He has a twofold ministry, right? He went out fully charged, ready to do God's work into the community, and whomever God wanted to, use as an example for us to read about and see. And there's so many other things we don't know about that weren't written, because I think the books would be stacked to the moon. But other things we do know, Jesus went out, did his ministry, engaged with the public, and then he went off into solitude. How many times does you read he goes off to pray? He, in other words, he's pulling his charger back and he's recharging. He goes back to God. And what's funny is I spend probably, either I'm not working, engaged with people, I'm a very, outgoing person, but I probably spend 90% of my time alone. I ride my bike alone. I spend my time with God. I'm 100% comfortable being alone. I love people, but there's times where I need to recharge my battery, and I do that with my time spent with God in prayer and meditation. It's another interesting concept. It's like, pray for me, pray for me. Prayer to me is you're petitioning God for something. Okay, God, but then we don't listen. Meditation is listening. Listening to God's voice is one of the most critical things or experiences a person can have. But we're so busy with everything else in life that we don't stop. And God's sitting over here like, I already gave you the answer 10 minutes ago. You didn't want to hear it. Stop and listen for God's voice, and you hear it. And to your point about going back to the wellness side, all the things about wellness, looking good, feeling good, performing well, thinking properly, having a positive mindset, all that stuff, most people don't realize this in the Christian world. That's a form of worship. That's how you worship God, to thank him, right? For him giving you this. He made all this. He made the performance, right? So if I eat properly, I can go and perform well in my fitness world. If I think and fill my mind with all good, positive stuff like I do, can you imagine, like, I'm sharing all this positive stuff, and I'm in the worst station of life right now on a lot of other things. You imagine if I get through those things, I'm gonna be on fire, like nitrous in my body, right? So, but I've created a pattern, right, of habits of insulating myself from not crashing and burning. That's why I could still stand strong despite the casket going down, sinking to the bottom of the ocean. I know God's going to come. I don't know what depth, but I know he's going to do it. Now, I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. And I have my moments where I'm like, God, but then I go back. But the good thing is I've created a habit of positivity. Okay, when I'm feeling bad, go do something and think about something positive to help your brothers and sisters. And when I do that and post it, And I know it touched someone's life. Like when you said to me, like, oh, wow, I got you on your favorites thing. I'm super humbled by that. I'm just a guy like you, sojourning through life. We connected here. God connected us, and here we are. But to hear you say that is like, wow, okay. God's using me. That's more evidence of faith going, God's with me, God's with me, God's with me. Those little markers of success, right? I don't need 100 million people following. I don't have an ego. It just means I'd be able to do more. And to he who has such, more is expected, right? In a sense, right? So it's all part of the spiritual journey here and building the kingdom together. So, yeah.
You mentioned that you like to spend time with yourself, and this is one of the things that's been coming up in my own life. People have been saying, would you be your own friend to that voice in your head that is so critical and so negative? If that person that is the critical, negative person in your head was an actual physical person in real life, would you want to hang out with them?
In my mind now? Are you asking me that?
Oh, I'm asking this for myself.
Well, only you could answer that, right? If you're comfortable being with who you are, in your space, looking in the mirror and being comfortable. I am. I mean, I have a long road to go, but for me to be able to openly say to you that I watched pornography in the past means that God's done a work that I'm not ashamed, because he's taken that sin. I've learned from the futility of it, and it's been washed away, right? I've done steroids in my life. I will never forget, this is crazy. This is a crazy story. So I literally biked to my son's soccer game. It's like 4 or 5 years ago. This is right when Lance Armstrong came out. This was a soul, what an experience. So they're literally, imagine the game's about to start. Soccer because you were just there yesterday. I'm flying. I'm running late to the game, so I'm booking it on the bike. I get there, I'm pouring with sweat, and the guys, family, the fathers are like, "Hey, man, what's up?" Yeah, man, what's the score? No, they're just about to start. All right, cool. He's like, "Hey, man, what do you think about Lance? He just came out with Doping, man, on Oprah or something, whatever the year was." And I'm like, I said, "Man, who am I to judge him? I've done steroids in my life." I said this on the sideline. The whole thing stopped, and all the parents looked at me like, he didn't just say that. And I was like, "Yeah." And then it was like, and then the guys were like, oh. And so the reason I bring that up is the reason I can say that so flippantly is because I've healed. I asked God for forgiveness. I did wrong. I'm paying the price for that. I put a substance in my body and made a bad decision at a time in my life, and I paid the price for that. So I got no one else to blame but myself. But if I can stop one person, I can't tell you how many people God has brought in my path in coaching and counseling in the last 10 years, last decade, with that very notion that I've been able to say, bro, you don't want to go down that road. Let me show you the scars from injecting. Let me show you this. And I'm able to speak about it openly, because if I can stop one person from doing it, then it was well worth me taking the risk. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. That's the truth. So I've healed from it. And so that's part of my story, and that's part of my testimony, that I'm able to do that. So I'm circling back in a sense, to your statement about, are you comfortable being, with the voices in your mind and your friends? And the answer is yes. And I think the reason I'm bringing that up is I think it's a point of encouragement to help people to get to that place, is whatever you're going through, whatever you've been through, your deepest, darkest sin and secret or wrongdoing, if you put it on God's altar, he vaporizes it, right? There is no wrong that God can overdone. That's the cross. That's Easter. That's what just happened. He died on the cross, and then he laid his life down, and he resurrected to show us his power over that. But he wants us to come to him to put that on his altar. And there is peace. That's the peace that I believe that surpasses all understanding, be able to speak openly about that when you would be shamed or, oh my God. And there's a level of, so it helps you to become friends with yourself in a place that you're comfortable being who you are at all times. That's how I see it. And that's what I've come to in my own journey at this, as of right this moment.
You mentioned it earlier when you do your ministries, and people are talking to you about the challenges in their life, that you approach it with being non-judgmental. And it's reminding me about this critical voice that, I have in my head. I need to remind that just like my goal is to not judge others, my goal is not to judge myself as well.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Great point. And that voice that's doing that condemnation, is the same voice that tempted Jesus on the mount saying, oh, come on, surely you can just bow down to me and I'll give you the earth, right? That's what we're this is spiritual warfare, that those negative voices in our mind. You either have God speaking all things good into our minds. I just love that phrase, manifested in the pandemic. And then you have the devil whispering all the negative things, trying to keep you, oh, God wouldn't do this, or, oh, no, you're not worthy. Oh, God certainly wouldn't call you to do this. You don't have the talents or the skill. All that negative stuff doesn't come from God. God is an edifier. God is an encourager. God is an inspirer. Inspiring literally means to come from the Spirit. It comes from God. That's what inspiration means. That's why I use chief inspiration officer as kind of like a cool way to, oh, you're a counselor. No. My job is to inspire you to create a spark, right? For you to realize your worth, your value in God's plan, why he has you here. Otherwise, he wouldn't need you to be here. You're here for a mission. Now you got to go figure out what it means. And I'm going through this with my son right now because he's all into this teenage, I got to get rich. And I'm like, no. God has you here to make our world a better place. You figure out how you want to do it or how he's going to use you to do it. And so another way to say it is you're either giving to the world or you're taking away. There really is no middle ground. So we have to make a choice, right? God came to the Israelites in Deuteronomy 30:19, and he said, listen, it's real simple. I put before you life and blessings or curses and destruction. I want you to choose life. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. Deuteronomy 30:19. And it's like, ooh, we all have that. And I just presented this to my son, as a matter of fact. Got to choose where you want to go. For me, I want the blessings. I want to be a blessing, right? So I want to live a fruitful, meaningful, satisfied life of contentment, right? And I always say that I'm content, but I'm not complacent. There's a difference. I can go to God right now and feel comfortable. He'd give me a high five and give me a hug and welcome me into the gates of heaven. I'm not boasting, but I have that peace to know that. But he keeps me here, therefore I'm not complacent because I know there's work to be done. And that's what I was saying on my 47. I said, I just turned 47, but I'm not ready to go to heaven because there's work to be done. And I see it. I mean, we wake up every day and go, oh my God, dang, there's a lot of work. Let's go, the amount of hurting in this world. So
I don't know if you saw in my email, but I call myself the chief charity motivator.
Ooh, I like that. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
nice.
When you own your own businesses, you can kind of call yourself whatever you want. And while I
love it.
I do like founder and CEO, my real goal is to be a chief charity motivator. And so we have heard so much from you today about your source of inspiration and how important Jesus is in your life and the real center of who you are. And I want to thank you for your honesty, for sharing about your life and the struggles you've had and the overcoming that you've experienced and the growth that you have gone through. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I'm hoping that it would be a blessing to others as much as it's been to me. So thank you, Jason, so much for being here.
It's an honor to be with you. I mean, and likewise, you great questions. Love the energy. May God, continue to bless you and allow your message to resonate where it needs to go and who needs to hear it and help those who do. So, and also that he helps you to, hopefully something that was said here help with your own, situation and some of the voices in your mind and all that good stuff.
And I just want to put a plug in for one of your charities of choice, the Wounded Warrior Project.
Sure.
So if any of our listeners are feeling inspired by your message and want to support disabled veterans, they can go to woundedwarriorproject.org. And if they'd like to continue the conversation with you, they can email you at jdh@jdhministries.org.
Yeah, that's correct. And by the way, I just want to say, what you are hoping to do, you're actually doing it. Your podcast. So it's whether you have one, interviewee. I don't know the language, but you're actually here. It's a success. We've had the conversation. The fact that you actually took the initiative to do it, is awesome. And I wish you nothing but success. See you shine. And I'm blessed and humbled that you allow me this opportunity to share part of my journey with your audience, with you, and get to know you a little bit better too. And as you said it earlier, I think you summed it up best. We're in the same journey together, right? To edify each other, to share each other's burdens. That's discipleship. That's part 2 of the process of our life together. So super grateful. Now I know you're in the area. You're not that far away too. So once this pandemic, passes, get together for coffee on me, and or tea or whatever you drink or whatever. But huge blessing. It's a huge blessing to take time out of the day to do this with you, and I'm super humble for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jason. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, you too. Bye for now.